Last time on the Paris Saint-Germain Clown Saga, our Parisian stars began the 2023-24 Champions League season with a not-so-convincing run. Nonetheless, into the knockouts, they surprised many and advanced to the semis after coming back from 4-2 down versus Barcelona. However, they would struggle to finish any chances versus Dortmund, and when his teammates needed him most, Kylian Mbappé disappeared like Alexis Lalas when someone with more than 2 followers calls him out. And speaking of, it isn't a post-2020 PSG season unless the drama overshadows everything. For some reason, even though we all literally knew it would happen, Mbappé decided the best time to tell his teammates that he was leaving was in the middle of the Champions League campaign. Fast forward to this summer, and thank the heavens, I no longer have to hear about this love triangle between Mbappé, Real Madrid, and PSG. Huh? Wait, there's more? In Mbappe's first press conference after signing with, keep this in mind, Real Madrid, he said that certain things and people at PSG made him unhappy. PSG reportedly felt that Mbappé was being very ungrateful and responded by refusing to pay him back to recover from the fact they had basically been fleeced in this deal. Mbappé, though, was not backing down and reportedly sought to be paid his remaining wages due to PSG benching him after his initial announcement. And in the end, Mbappé would get what he wanted, as in October, PSG were forced by the French league to pay him 55 million. With the disastrous God Emperor Mbappé project finally past them, PSG could finally now focus on building for the future. First, they sold the deadwood that was Danilo Pereira for 5 million. The Parisians also let go of Hugo Ekitike for 16.5 million after buying him last year for 28.5 million. Wonderful business there. And then finally, PSG shipped Manuel Ugarte to hell for 50 million after buying him last year for 60 million. But why don't these guys just give out finance courses at this point? Then came the newbies to contribute to the future of the Parisian Empire. First, a new backup keeper in 26-year-old Matvei Safonov from Krasnodar. Seeing how PSG's defense crumbled because of the quality and depth, they then signed a promising 22-year-old center back in William Pacho. Then came the highly desirable 19-year-old Desiree Doué for 50 million. This kid for a couple years now had been a target for multiple European giants. Finally, PSG filled in the missing gap in defensive midfield with 19-year-old João Neves from Benfica for almost 60 million. Despite not getting a proven goal scorer last summer, PSG's first season without Mbappé went much better than most people expected. They went their first 14 league games unbeaten, going top of the table with the most goals in the league. Bradley Barcola was absolutely exploding onto the scene with 9 goals, and João Neves was showing PSG fans what they've been yearning for since Thiago Motta and Blaise Matuidi. However, there were some games in that stretch that were a bit concerning. When the games are more open, Luis Enrique's PSG will swallow a team up because of the ridiculous speed demons they use on the counter. However, Enrique ball becomes a lot more stale when they have to come up with something from scratch, especially if they're facing up against a team that is more defensive. 1-1 with Rome, 78% possession. 1-1 with Nice, 72%. 1-1 with Nantes, 85%. A lack of a finisher up top doesn't help, but this has been a concern about Enrique ball for a long time now, and quite honestly, after 2 summer windows, that's on him too. And this was exposed a ton more against better quality sides in the Champions League. In their first game versus Girona, the Parisians narrowly won at home only because the keeper's brain ran out of battery. Then they were locked down by Arteta's terrorism ball, and the game was pretty much said and done by the 35th minute. Onto their return home versus PSV, it was a mix of both Enrique ball and poor finishing. In the 33rd minute, it did not start out well, as the Parisians are intercepted and quickly punished by an egomaniac. But it's okay, because Nasser secretly planted a chip in the PSV keeper's brain, and Paris Saint-Germain are once again saved. Next was Atleti, and in the 13th minute, PSG do well to force their opponents into an error and capitalize. 4 minutes later, the football gods decide to play a cruel trick, and the Parisians accept their fate. Seeking a winner now, we once again witness this team's god-awful finishing, and its many low-quality shots. Nonetheless, in the last minute of stoppage time, Lee Kang's shot is saved. However, Hakimi receives a gift, and he absolutely fucks it up by taking a touch. Still time for a winner though. PSG corner taken quickly. The ball is whipped in, but it only reaches the keeper, and oh no.
Griezmann. And now it's Atleti's time to try and put the pressure on. And still all 3 points, and that's exactly
22 shots, 72% possession, 2-1 Atleti. Prime Enrique ball. PSG then followed that up with another loss in Munich vs Bayern, and for about the 80th time since signing, Ousmane Dembélé was as effective as a used condom. However, a couple weeks later, Paris Saint-Germain finally broke their 4-game winless streak with an easy away victory vs RB Salzburg. That said, with 2 games remaining, PSG sat 25th in the league with a real risk of not advancing to the knockouts. And things started looking really dire when in the second half vs Man City, the Parisians conceded twice in just 3 minutes. Thankfully for PSG though, this was Man City's defense they were up against, and the Speed Demons tore through the Saran wrap-ass backline, scoring 4 unanswered. With that result, the Parisians were now back in the playoff spots and sealed the deal on the final day in Stuttgart thanks to an Ousmane Dembélé hat-trick? But before we go any further, January transfer window. Marco Asensio was loaned out to Aston Villa. PSG spent like 2 years targeting Milan Skriniar only for nothing to go right, and now he's been loaned out to Turkey. He was free at least. An even worse bit of business was buying someone who so clearly did not fit Enrique's system for 90 million euros. And after a season and a half of disappointment, Rwanda Congo Mali is off to Juve for the rest of the season. Not all dealings were bad though. PSG sold Xavi Simons for 50 million after buying him back for just 4 million a couple years ago. Paris Saint-Germain only bought 1 player in January, but what a player. The tricky winger himself, Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, for 70 million. The club now has yet another brilliant winger, and this one, with a couple feints, can cause mass amounts of chaos for a backline. Because of their clutch climb back to the upper half of the playoff positions, PSG were up against Brest and made easy work of them in the first half with a 3-0 win away. Then 8 days later, they again exposed Brest and eviscerated them 7-0. Kvara started this game, and with Barcola deployed on the left, the Georgian would be Dembele's replacement on the right. Right? Since being shifted up top in mid-December, Ousmane Dembélé has scored 21 goals in 16 games, including 2 straight hat-tricks. The one thing that he's been missing that made him so magical in the past was his confidence, and with that at an all-time high, he's been unstoppable. And this could not come at a better time with PSG drawing favorites Liverpool in the last 16. Many believed the Reds to be the favorites, but Paris Saint-Germain quickly showed they could not be taken lightly with the form they were in right now. 15 minutes in, peak confidence Dembélé burns through 2 defenders, squares in the middle to a completely wide open João Neves, and he completely misses it. 4 minutes later, however, the Parisians continue to dominate this game. Vitinha dishes it to Kvara, who sets the scene, and that is absolute cinema from the Georgian. 1-0 PS. Oh wait, his heel's offside. Nevertheless, like a woman asking you to buy her baby formula at Walmart, PSG remained persistent and driven. Then, in the 29th minute, Barcola finds Dembélé unmarked. All he has is the keeper to beat, but his brilliance was matched by an even better save. Still though, there's a scramble for a loose ball. Barcola picks it up again, fires it at a defender. It falls again to him, and that could not sum up PSG's finishing more. Now here comes the Khachapuri Messi, and he just strides through 2 defenders, but again it's saved. Halftime then arrives, and PSG sure has made a statement to the world. From top to bottom, an absolute dominant performance. Liverpool barely had any chance. I don't even think they had one. Their press consistently frazzled Liverpool into mistakes, and the width was doing an amazing job spreading out Liverpool's players to create massive amounts of space for PSG to glide into. But it was still 0-0, and at the end of the day, that is the only thing that matters. And so far, PSG has either been stopped by Alisson or the classic. However, there was still another 45 minutes, and especially with Van Dijk defending like he has dementia right now, if PSG keep playing like they have, it would only be a matter of time. Quickly, the Parisians went back to work and continued to get the front foot over Liverpool every time they went forward. But as the game continued, PSG were noticeably getting more of the, oh no, it's Luis Enrique's kryptonite. Time with the ball! With Arne Slot shifting his entire team further back and making them more compact to erase the pockets of space between the lines that PSG loves, Paris Saint-Germain's attack immediately went dormant. With the now ineffective wingers just hanging around the edge of the box, we were back to the same old low chance efforts on goal, and even though some of the shots were actually good, that pesky keeper just wasn't having any of it. It's alright though. On a positive, Liverpool have basically accepted a draw here, so this is still a good result PSG can take back to Anfield. Wait, no, surely not.
Comes Harvey Elliott, and Liverpool have thieved a goal at the end.
Meet the astronauts. Give me freedom, give me fire, give me 12 kilometers of space, or I will retire. PSG had 71% of the possession, 27 shots, and lost to a team with 2 shots. It really is the history of the PSG. I will say though, the Konate incident was definitely a red card, but seeing how the refs didn't actually give him anything, it makes me think that this might have been offside, and I've seen some people say that too. The thing is though, we'll never know because the broadcast never gave us a full replay of everything. But outside of that, PSG failed to finish any of their chances in the first half, and then in the second, they failed to adapt when their opponents adjusted their tactics. Sure, Alisson was incredible, made some big stops as well, but the other 70% is still on PSG and Luis Enrique. Also, are we not going to talk about Nuno Mendes ball watching and Donnarumma being Donnarumma? Seeing how this is the whole season now and nothing's changed, and now PSG are going to Anfield 1-0 down, yeah, I'm just gonna call it right here, right now, 2 days before the game even starts. This is already over for PSG. Just watch. I already know I'm right. Needing a goal to tie on aggregate, PSG quickly find themselves brought to their own knees by Liverpool, but Nuno Mendes makes a huge block to keep them in the game. Moments later, the Parisians now have to try and contain Salah. They get lucky with some bounces, but thankfully Salah is still playing like he's got flashbacks from 22. And then against the run of play, the Parisians with their first chance of the game get a little bit of luck themselves, and after just 10 minutes, who else but Ousmane Dembele to make the tie level at 1. Momentum now on their side, Enrique's men grab this game by its neck and dominate the rest of the first half. One brilliant tactician after another. It was like watching a collab between Michael Reeves and Boy Boy. However, the most important part never came to fruition. Oh god. Surely not this story again.
Wide with his head, Alexander-Arnold off the inside of the post, and again,
Not so fast, because Liverpool was offside this whole time. So PSG lived to see another day. The onslaught was far from over though, as their opponents continued to apply the pressure. Nonetheless, indestructible as ever, Gianluigi Donnarumma and his defense held strong. However, in the 78th minute, PSG failed to defend a brilliant delivery, but the header hits the post. What a relief for the Parisians. Into extra time now, it is all Paris Saint-Germain again, as they practically leash Liverpool into playing the way they want them to. You could perhaps say they were playing. However, it is the same old PSG. Can't put it in the back of the net, so we go into penalties. But need I remind you, who's in goal? No stresso, no need to be depresso, as the Wall of Italia makes 2 huge saves against players that had no business taking ones this early on. That kind of sounds a little bit familiar. Finally, 19-year-old Desiree Doué puts the cherry on top as PSG upsets one of the favorites. They very much deserved it, and wow, I couldn't have been proven more wrong. You know what? Fair play, Luis Enrique. No, but actually, I got way too ahead of myself. I celebrated way too early. I flew way too close to the sun, and I got burned because PSG has evolved over the last couple months in terms of the way they play, in terms of actually creating chances. They still may not be good at finishing them, but they're creating way more than before with that fluidity. And everyone just seems to be on the right page and wavelength. Everyone knows their assignment, and this has allowed PSG to drag defenders out of position, and they can capitalize on it. By the beginning of April, Paris Saint-Germain had already clinched the title, having still not lost a single league fixture, a reflection of how well PSG has rebuilt, and also the absolutely grim state of French football right now. But this was perfect for the Parisians, because now they could focus all of their energy towards the Champions League, with their next opponents in the quarterfinals being Aston Villa, who is managed by none other than former PSG head coach Unai Emery. Before the game though, Villa's goalkeeper Emi Martinez arrived with the objective to rile up as many PSG fans as possible, so he dyed his hair the color of Argentina's flag and then wore an Argentina World Cup winner's hat. What he forgot to do though was actually perform. PSG, after going a goal down, would immediately respond and then add 2 more to comfortably win 3-1 at home. Then the second leg, Paris Saint-Germain scored twice through both their fullbacks in the 11th and 27th minute to make it 5-1 on aggregate. Hello, Almighty Gospel. It's been 5 years since the last time I needed your power to shift the winds. My lord, it's been a long time since that infamous collapse of the camp. But how people talk about it, it's like the disaster unfolded yesterday. Unai, they don't believe in you. But that doesn't matter. Because I do. Please, with all your newfound genius and wisdom, you must save football. 34 minutes played, Emery's men on the attack, and thanks to a lucky deflection, the villains finally have a goal. Into the second half, John McGinn, guided by divine intervention, waltzes through the PSG backline, and then unleashes a shooting star from way out, and now all of a sudden the gap is back to where it was at the beginning of the night. Not even 2 minutes later though, Marcus Rashford, a man PSG wishes they didn't know, wriggles his way past a couple defenders, lays it off for Ezri Konsa, who smacks in a third for Villa. Oh my god. My prayers might actually be answered. But Emery tells his disciples 2 words: not enough. The villains a minute later come back with fire in their eyes, but the chance is saved by unholy magic. Into the 69th minute, a deep ball flows through winds by the fate of Unai Emery. It finds the feet of Asensio one-on-one, but he's no match for Satan's greatest soldier. Second minute of stoppage time. The hourglass is at its last grains. Matty Cash crosses in a Hail Mary. Please, Maatsen, please!
Is there a God? How could he let this happen?
And after escaping by the skin of their teeth, PSG advance past Aston Villa 5-4 in aggregate and move on to the semis. The next opponents would be a third straight Premier League side in Arsenal, and in just 3 minutes, Ousmane Dembele shushes the Emirates. PSG should have gotten a second goal not too soon after, but as we've seen throughout this video, the finishing just ain't there. And with the French club struggling to capitalize, their opposition started to grow into the game. Fortunately, that attack was even worse, and PSG had a literal titanium wall in goal. Then late into the game, with the opposition's threat fizzling out, this presented a perfect chance for PSG to put a dagger in the hearts of every Gooner. And by the 83rd minute, PSG are practically creating a work of art using Arsenal as the canvas, and now Bradley Barcola can end it right here. No worries though, because just 1 minute later, PSG again get in behind the defense, and now it's just the keeper to beat. Maybe he thought he was offside. Nonetheless, Paris Saint-Germain snatch a single goal victory at the Emirates, a nice advantage to take back home. However, this was no relaxing night on the couch in front of the TV, as PSG were absolutely bombarded by the opposition within the first 10 minutes. But once more, Gianluigi Donnarumma was showing the whole globe, whether they liked it or not, who their new god was. The Parisian attack, now officially followers of this sacred being, then showed their appreciation for his blessings and returned the favor, scoring twice to send PSG back to the Champions League final for the first time since 2020. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, this is not good. It's either PSG lose or just put the fries in the bag, bro. Oh.
Back to Vitinha. Fitting beautifully to Doué. And it's Hakim. John Nevers has made a run into the box. This is Desiree Doué and it's deflected in. Balls have been open here. Vitinha has found Doué. It is delicious. There's no flag at the moment. It's Kavicha Kvaratskhelia. It's 4. Mayulu. Oh! It's 5. It's going to be not only Paris Saint-Germain's first Champions League success, it's going to be a record Champions League success.
Maxwell, wake up, wake up, wake up, Maxwell, wake up, Maxwell. The birds are chirping, the sun is out. Wake up, Maxwell, 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 wake up.